Hello. Good evening. Well, it wouldn't be a proper stream unless it was Boomer audio. Yeah, the fact that I have the stream up and I could see that there was no mic input at all is Hello. Now my own stream is coming through. Good evening. Uh, Proper stream. There we go. Right. It's perfect, except the fact that I had the stream up on another window as well, and therefore it went. So apologies again to everyone. There was no stream last week, but I am intending on a more consistent streaming schedule going forward. I was away last weekend. I've had a death in the family, and then I was ill all this week. So joy of joys. Um, it wouldn't be an NSO stream if there was not Boomer audio issues. But hopefully all fixed now. Hopefully everyone can hear everything. Thank you, Tim Cornish, for $5 saying glad to see you back. We'll give a listen later. Yeah. So I have been thinking about this UK aesthetics page. This is run by a chap called Drunley Coupler or something like that on Twitter. It's got a modest following, something like 40,000. And basically all it does is post pictures of the UK without comment. So if I take a look here, and we scroll down, we can see just a picture, just graffiti, live by the Dean, die by the Dean, or just be nice. Other stuff, incomprehensible gibberish, random videos of like strange ethnic minority things. UAE apparently is the source of this. This guy is very sad that his indefinite leave to remain has been changed to a 10-year residency instead. Try on a hijab, free Islamic literature with a Primark in the background, stuff like that, right? I'm sure many of us are familiar, but this became interesting to me because Kunali Drukpa here was featured as part of a radio broadcast for Radio 4. Now, don't know how many people listen to Radio 4, but it's fairly mainstream and usually a bit more um, a mixture between radio dramas and sort of talking heads, basically. And they were trying to work out whether or not UK aesthetics was racist, which I found hilarious, right? And they're saying it's posted without comment, but it's clear that there's sort of negative implication here, and I really wanted to unpack like this concept of the negative implications. So we're just going to have a little listen to a bit of this radio broadcast, and then I'll stop it as we go through. I think it's only 5 minutes, so we'll see. I'm just going to double check that it's audible when I press play.
I'm glad you mentioned social media because in the last couple of weeks I've noticed on my social media timeline on various apps quite a lot of accounts that I don't follow, but I'm getting their content anyway, and they're tagged UK, and that is spelled YOOKAY, which is supposed to be a reference to how UK is pronounced in a multicultural London accent. And the UK stuff is a combination of pictures of streets, or sometimes it's public transport. Sometimes there's videos in there as well. So what is going on with it? I spoke to someone who researches anti-migrant sentiment online. It's Siddharth Venkata Ramakrishnan, and he's an analyst at the think tank, the Institute for Strategic Dialogue.
So interesting already that the people they're having comment on this. That's a very English name, sir. It's a very English name, you know.
What it does is combine examples of scenes where cohesion seems to have broken down because the argument goes because of multiculturalism, with entirely innocuous images of, say, delivery drivers who are South Asian, or signs written in other languages, or things like a vape shop in an old sort of Tudor style house. Its focus is on linking together all these factors into evidence that, Britain is being overrun. There's one of a Hindu ritual happening in the Thames, some guys immersing a goddess in the Thames. There's nothing dark in that, I would argue, but it is seen as being, sort of fundamentally against the character of Britain.
So there's the rub, really, is here are things which are fundamentally against the character of Britain in areas where that character of Britain is completely absent, but you may be able to see the last vestiges of it again. We have the old Victorian buildings in that Islamic literature, try on a hijab picture. You've got the Primark in the background, and a lot of this he says it's unproblematic imagery. But what you're seeing is an area that is no longer British, or that is no longer English specifically, shall we say, if it's going to be specific to England. I've started to, with with this whole UK thing, I'm actually moving away now from referring to the country as the UK ever. I much prefer the term Britain or Great Britain, that or specifically the nation within that we want to talk about, because that is a country with a people, essentially. UK is now a sort of ubiquitous nation-sized conglomerate of globalists, sort of nut jobs, basically, and encompasses everyone within. So I want to kind of reclaim the concept of British as part of Great Britain, as opposed to a UK resident or something like that. And it's all quite prescient as well with Keir Starmer's Island of Strangers rhetoric and talk. But these people on the radio show, as they go on to speak about, are saying, we can't identify anything specifically racist. It's just been posted as part of the UK aesthetic, and what they really are gleaning from this is there's a negative connotation, and they don't understand why it's negative. Or rather, they can perceive it as negative, but they don't understand why even they perceive it as negative, even though it's should be an innocuous image. You can see the programming kicking in, right, with the image I chose for this stream being the delivery drivers, riders, all foreign, all standing around, milling around outside of McDonald's or in a town square or something, and the main concept that I'm trying to wrestle with here is how far is the idea of Britain instantiated in the minds of the people of Britain. And by the people of Britain, I mean both the natives and the new arrivals in what they expect, and what they see is there. Because you have the new arrivals who've picked up and placed down their own culture, but then you have videos like there was a video of a young man, proper roadman accent, complaining that the part of his town had been overrun by Polish people, and he's like, he was the first invader, and now there's another wave of invaders who have, he may well have been born here and grown up here, but still part of the demographic that's moved in, right? So he's been replaced in his own town, Warsaw, I think it is. That's what he was talking about, and but they haven't really had time, I suppose, to establish like a long history. They have 50, maybe up to 70 years, and obviously a lot of them are really from the last 20. Up to 70 years where they have been able to establish a community in our country at our grace, that they now consider that area their own ethnic enclave, their own place. And so when things start to change there, that is contrary to the culture that they have instantiated, they become distressed. So they're posting pictures of Polish shops, much in the same way the native British are posting the UK aesthetic of like all these other different minority groups. They're posting Polish shops and stuff like that, and going, where did it all go wrong? Where's it changed? So I'm curious what the metaphysical picture of what Britain looks like to different groups of people, because obviously, as someone who's grown up in a sort of semi-rural, I want to say, small town, who hated cities and to a degree still does, but has lived all over the shop. To me, the picture of Britain is very clear. It's rolling green hills. It's the green and pleasant land narrative. It's the shires. It's the cities are kind of like great squatting organisms that sort of sit on top of that we have to tolerate for commerce and things like that. But there's no reason that they can't be also contain great monuments and be living museums of sort of the greater accomplishments of the nation. And to someone who lives in London, which is something I noted when I went to university in London, and I met people who'd lived all their lives in the city and in London, they have a very almost different, quite a different view of things. The countryside to them is more like a holiday destination or a retirement zone than it is the actual cultural fabric of Britain. And but it's somewhere which may become more real. I knew one who moved out to Cheshire because they didn't want to raise their kids in London. So they moved to Cheshire, and now they're basically adjusting and having to change everything based on that. There was quite a culture shock for them initially. And so the metaphysical Britain of the kind of globo homo liberal city dweller is more akin to like this vast melting pot of different cultures. Melting pot in quotes, because obviously they don't integrate often. And therefore, like, the fundamental right wing ideal metaphysical Britain is what I consider to be my view of Britain. I consider it to be the rolling green hills and the people of Britain, and in a particular way, the English, the Irish, the Welsh, and the Scots, and then the Northern Irish, whatever. And then for the city people, their baseline has got to be like all these different communities, right? All these different communities interacting in the various ways, both positive and negative, that they do. So the fact that people from the city are looking at it and going like, I don't know what's racist. I know there's something off. There's something wrong here, but that I can't really pin down what it is, because there's clearly a negative connotation. And sometimes I can see it and sometimes I can't. I find that very interesting in terms of idea transmission, because it means that our ideas, the right's ideas, are penetrating at the subconscious level into the minds of some people who otherwise would not be feeling that way, because otherwise they would look at the UK aesthetic and think this is mad, like it doesn't make any sense. It's a bit like someone who's never seen the Loss meme, who suddenly sees a bunch of memes with Loss iconography, and then uh, suddenly it's everywhere. If you don't get it, you don't get it, and then as soon as you do get it, you understand it. As soon as you see it, you recognize it. So the fact that these people who, on a metaphysical level, should not be recognizing anything negative about this and thinking honestly that this is a bit of an own by the right, or it's just sort of like a racist nonsense or something like that, are actually able to discern that this is drudgery, that there's something negative here, there's something wrong. And I think it's going to come much more easy to the native British, mostly because they can see that there's nothing of themselves there anymore. But it's also something which I think will begin to influence the normal class, essentially, the normie class. So it's a really curious phenomenon. Um, and I wonder to what extent it ties into our understanding of beauty as well. Because when something is wrong, it's sort of uncanny valley, it's sort of um, just slightly off. And then when something's been completely transformed, it's something else entirely. Uh, but we have an aesthetic sentiment as a country. Again, I appreciate we're getting into vagaries here. We're getting into the weeds of taste and culture, and Britain historically has always had uh, these diverse sets of groups, and I mean diverse in the sense of like there's a huge difference historically between these little fiefdoms and groups between the difference between Nottingham and Manchester is as wide a gulf as between England and France in some sense, as a whole. Like we have all these different interconnected communities with um, uh, different sensibilities and histories and industries, particularly because, of course, we were driven by an industrial. The Industrial Revolution, the formation of a lot of these places. It's not just agrarian and agriculture like other nations. We were um, being at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution. So, uh, where was I going with this? The concept of beauty and what beautiful is varies from culture to culture, and we can see that this is alien and therefore not beautiful to us, even though the idea of an Islamic literature stand with try on a hijab in front of it might be beautiful to someone from, say, the Pakistani community. And understanding uh, cultural similarities between different cultures who are coming here, I think is very, very key to understanding the incentive structures around those. And in particular, when we want to move beyond intellectual discussion, when probably Farage gets in 5 years, what do we want the dialectic to be? What do we want to push in terms of which groups who are most similar and who aren't similar, who need to be incentivized to move away, essentially, to make Britain a fundamentally beautiful place for us, the native British, and fundamentally an ugly place for a foreigner to come in. It's an interesting, um, it's sort of the metaphysical conundrum I'm going for. I appreciate this is all getting quite esoteric here, but I was really quite perturbed by the UK aesthetic stuff, basically. Um, this sort of really strange marriage of cultures where it's just something completely alien to the UK, to Britain. The Discover Islam Public Information Centre should not exist in this country, for instance. Let's see what people are saying in the chat. That's English. Foreigner and stranger are French words. Oh, you've been listening to the should we be using more Greek or more Latin language stream, I can see. Britain to me is Faulty Towers, the scenery of the old Doctor Who, and the like. By old, I mean black and white. Okay, so so to go on you're Danish, so your understanding of Britain is going to come a lot from a perception in media, which I also find really interesting in terms of what countries expect to see here. So there's the phenomenon of Paris syndrome for, I think it's the Chinese, but it might be the Japanese, where they arrive to Paris, which they've seen in Amelie and all these French films and believe to be the most beautiful city on earth, and they arrive and it's just another current day city, and they they basically have a panic attack, and some of them are hospitalized occasionally because Paris is not what they believed it was, and similarly, I know someone who did work in South America, and their understanding of Britain was that we're all was based off old black and white films. They thought that we still all rode horses and wore top hats and read the newspaper, and we didn't have any of these modern devices and things like that. We lived in a sort of world apart from them, which is curious. Um, and I do think that these sort of greater narratives about how a people is perceived and a nation as a product of those people is very important for um, not just in terms of the accuracy of the thing being important, but in terms of the spiritual development of a nation, in terms of the expectations of behavior, um, that is really important. So the idea of an Englishman being someone who's you can trust his word, he's always fair dealing. You can rely on them to be arbiters of law and order and good people all round, as well as knowledgeable and practical, is a really valuable metaphysical trait that I think we should hold on to as a nation, and I think is eroded considerably by the UK aesthetic. So when we see Birmingham, absolutely collapsing and drowning in rubbish because all the bin drivers have gone on strike, and the shall we say the new British have trashed the place basically because they don't have that same metaphysical sort of impetus. They don't have the drive. It reminds me of the trolley problem, which is not the will you pull a lever to kill X or Y, but the trolley problem in terms of uh, you have left the supermarket. Do you return the trolley to the bay, even though you receive nothing? Uh, sensibilities of a particular culture, the apologeticness of the British um, as a concept. I do wonder about the apologeticness of the British, actually, how recent that is to the metaphysical landscape of Britain, because I would consider sort of imperial Britain to be brash and confident and unashamed and stalwart, whereas quite often we are considered too polite by other nations, and we were always polite, but I wonder to what degree we were apologetic historically. I'm curious about that. I'm a foreigner to the UK, but that also makes it clear to me when I look at certain streets of London, it looks like Baghdad. Yeah, so people come to London and they don't know what to expect. It's that's been an interesting one as well because some people do expect modern London. They expect the different cultures, and they are principally concerned with the relics of imperial Britain, like the museums and the art galleries and the buildings. So they see those and they go, "Oh, I went to Britain and it was great. I got to see all these things," and they kind of just push off the foreign-born population because it's kind of like you can't tell which are tourists and which are locals, and so they kind of assume everyone's a tourist. It's a bit like that in Rome as well. When I was there, I didn't know. Like it was clear there were people hawking stuff at you, and they were clearly living there, but you don't know who's necessarily a foreigner and who's a visitor and who's a resident, basically, just getting about their day. Um, and then others obviously come to London and they go, it's nothing like I pictured. Where are the English? And they want to see English people. In the same way that if I went to Paris and there were not Parisians in the Parisian cafes, it would be very, very distressing. Uh, let's see. Good day, North Sea. Pleasure. Uh, except for the word in question, that would be asking in English. Kind of ruins Shakespeare. Dutch entertainment is greatly focused on Britain. Dutch directness versus English agreeableness. Yeah, so again, the state of our education system means that my knowledge of British history is poorer than it should be, which means that I have to ask these questions. And now I'm gonna look it up later because I'm curious. But essentially uh, trying to understand the metaphysical nature of Britain as conveyed through this idea of no commentary, because it's got a memetic potential, the idea of no commentary on, say, this Discover Islam thing. Like, you know in your soul that there is something wrong here. It's something which transcends the conscious imprint of information. You do not need to be led to a conclusion. You do not need to be led to because in some sense, the radicalization that is the radicalization argument that's made by the left is often hinged to an argument. Whereas if you're just posting images, like, that person is essentially quote unquote radicalizing themselves, or coming to the conclusion they've already been radicalized, which I think is a really interesting thing when an idea of what Britain should be is being challenged here purely by images of the country in question. And I am curious to what extent, because this account has a small following, right? I don't think that it's got any kind of great cultural impact. But I am curious to the extent at which simply viewing around us the changed Britain that should not be, how that will impact people, and does impact people, and will impact people. Ask an AI. Don't do that on principle. Um, yeah. So that's about it, really. That's essentially what I wanted to uh, lay out in terms of a thesis. The idea is that there is this metaphysical idea of Britain. An account like UK Aesthetics puts out an image from actual Britain into the hyperreality, and presenting it without comment, everyone, without fail, can tell that it is a negative connotation image. And that is very interesting, because I think that many more people will agree with the negative connotation that they feel within their spirit, within their soul, within the heart of Britain, than will disagree. The programming might kick in. The programming might kick in again, and they go, it's not bad at all. It's racist to think it's bad, but that you can see in their eyes that the light has gone out, that the light the idea has been placed, the concept has been discovered. This makes them uncomfortable. It makes us uncomfortable, who are conscious and aware, and it makes them uncomfortable, but they're just in denial at the moment. If anything, it reinforces to me the fact that we're going to win this, that we are correct, that eventually, there's enough traction, because it will be so unignorable, which doesn't make me an accelerationist. It just makes me think that that's reality. Um, and yeah, that's all I've got for you, I'm afraid. It's just 30-minute excerpts of me spewing my brain. I am planning on having guests on for sort of more in-depth discussions. I've had interest from people like Professor Ed Dutton and Morgoth in particular. But yeah, you'll have to stay tuned for that sort of thing. I appreciate it's been a bit more rambly today, but thank you very much for sticking with me, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Please leave comments and let me know what you think. Good night.